Welcome into the Dad Verb Podcast, where we chat about parenting from the lens of a dad. My name's Andrew. I'm joined by Andrew Saunders and Ben Brown. And on this episode, we're going to be chatting about whether or not this next generation of children that we are raising is too soft. Are we ruining them with gentle parenting? We're going to open up the discussion here. It might be a little triggery, a little controversial, but we'll do our best to navigate this topic because it's complex.
This might be the last podcast, folks.
There are layers to this topic, so this is one where we'll share our thoughts, but we'd love to hear where you guys are at on this topic. Coming at you with a new cover art for the podcast. If you see the cover art on Spotify or on our Instagram, the Dad Verb Podcast Instagram, it was just me and Ben, our faces there, and Andrew wasn't. The other Andrew wasn't a part of it for the longest time, but he's here now. He's a part of the podcast cover. Finally got that updated, and very soon we're going to be having an intro package, a little sound bite from some professional voiceover that was made by AI. I don't know. We'll see. But we're gonna have we're trying to profess this up a little bit. And last thing before we roll into the episode, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're all matching a little bit here. We look
so fancy tonight.
We look good. All of these shirts were sent to us from Pins and Aces. Is that correct, Ben?
Yeah. Shout out to Liam and the crew over at Pins and Aces for sending us all a couple shirts to check out. If you know us, we are all, or at least I know Andrew and I are huge fans of very loud, very vibrant polos, like just obnoxious polos. This is actually probably the most subdued one I own. The other one they sent me was it's blue and there's pink and blue stripes all over it. So I thought it might not show up on camera super well.
Yeah.
But all my other work shirts are tropical and birds and giant flowers and skulls and Western scenes and all kinds of stuff. And that's what I wear to work. So I saw Pins and Aces, thought it'd be a good alignment, reached out to them, and they were kind enough to send some shirts over for us to check out. So what have you guys thought so far now that you've had them for a couple weeks, I think?
I've loved them. I'm a big fan of these kinds of polos, super lightweight, and I'm not just saying this because guys, we're not being paid for any of this. This isn't a sponsored post, but they were kind enough to send this along, and I genuinely like it. I really feel like they are true to fit. Some of them can run a little bit smaller, like Bad Birdie. They feel like a little bit I'm a size large. Feels a little bit tighter with the Bad Birdies, but this one feels great. When they say it's a large, it's a large. I love the feel of it, kind of along the lines of that Sunday Swagger brand as well. So I don't know, it feels great. I like loud patterns. I don't know if Saunders is in that camp as well. But Saunders, what are you thinking of these?
So I put this shirt on for my daughter's second birthday. I had gotten it that day, I think. And it was I was in the kitchen, I was cooking, and I was all sweaty. I'm I just need a shirt. Oh, what the heck? I'll throw it on, right? So first, I don't wear polyester, polyblend nylons. This is a 40, 30, 10 or something like that. Just not something I wear.
Yes.
It's a very comfortable shirt.
Yes.
I ran
Saunders
around a 2-year-old's birthday party all day in this shirt. And my only criticism of this shirt is the pattern I received. This shirt is very, very nice. But just for the record, I do IT work for a manufacturing company, and I have to go on to the factory floor. And if you're watching me on YouTube and you know what high visibility gear is, all right, this is the sweatshirt I have to wear so that I don't get hit by a truck or a forklift, okay? And I'm just saying,
it matches.
It might qualify, right?
It might qualify. I think you'd be close.
Yeah.
I think you'd be close.
So that is my only criticism of the shirt. Otherwise, very comfortable, fit as well. It breathes a lot more than I thought it would when I threw it on.
It does.
You guys can actually button it. I have an enormous neck. My neck is 19 inches when I'm
What's
small.
your take on that? I go button all the way to the top. I like doing the top button. Looks like Ben does. Ben doesn't. Top
It
button's
depends on
undone.
the day. Depends on the vibe that day. I might go top button, might not. That's my wild card.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can get button 2, right? But now I'm Andrew 2 in it, right? So I'm a 2-button on a polo with 3 buttons, but I always leave the top one undone unless I'm wearing a tie, even in dress shirts.
Gotcha.
But other than that, it's a great poll. I like it. I did go on and look because I prefer much subdued patterns, and nothing against pins and aces, but I probably won't be a customer because I couldn't find just like a flat black.
I know.
Yeah, well, like guys, forest green.
If you're interested,
it's not their style, but
we're gonna have that linked for you in case you do want to explore. See if you there's some loud patterns you're gonna mix and match us. I got sent like this. It's like a bunch of astronauts and stuff like that. I got a little NASA repping.
I know.
Going on.
Jealous. You got the NASA
like
one.
That one
awesome.
I would wear. I think.
And what it just so happens that U.S. just put we just landed on the moon for the first time in 50 years.
Back to the moon, right?
So I'm like, dude, this is amazing.
Unmanned aircraft on the moon.
USA.
There you go. Well, guys, we got to start with our sick check. It's a tradition that we do. To see if we can beat the odds and have the miracle of all of our families being healthy.
I don't think we've ever made it 3 weeks. Have we made it 3 weeks once?
I feel like we actually did have a run toward the end of 2023, and we actually beat the odds, and I think we did hit 3. I don't know if we hit 4. But this week,
we've never hit a month.
I don't think that we've hit a month. I don't know that we ever will, man. That's a
I think we were burgeoning on a month, and then you guys sent your kids back to daycare and school, and we were just done for that week.
Yeah.
Well, last week Ben was on the tail end of something. It was considered a healthy week. This week, I am actually. Our family is healthy. We're doing okay. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Not
reset
sick.
The counter.
Yeah, not sick yet, but my daughter for sure is on the way. I mean, cough, runny nose.
Yeah,
like probably not going to school tomorrow. She is she's on her way downhill. But hopefully it's not that bad. It seems pretty mild. It's just one of those. We don't want to be the parents that send the boogery, disgusting kid to school. Mm-hmm. So we keep her home, because we have that option. It's nice. So we keep her home for a day or two, make sure she's good, and then take it from there.
So I do need to be fair on this. We are not sick, but my 2-year-old's been battling baby eczema for probably 2 months. I don't call it sick because she's not sick.
I get what you're saying,
but
it's like an ailment.
She does have like her rib or her elbows have rashes. Behind your knees, right? Wrist. They call it.
Have that.
They call it joint eczema. It's very common in toddlers apparently, and a little 1% over-the-counter hydrozone cream cleaned her right up.
There you go. There you go.
So that got eliminated. But to be fair on the sick check thing, she's not sick, right? But we are not ailment free, illness free at this household. Maybe that's the way. They're not 100% healthy, right? But they're not catchable things.
I gotcha.
Well,
I gotcha.
I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I always say we're fine, and for the most part, we're fine, right? Yeah. But then I was like, oh, but eczema. Maybe I should talk about that. So
that is
I'm trying to be fair.
Well, guys, that's our sick check of the week. Let's dive into the meat of this episode. There was a piece that we found. I stumbled across on Daily Mail UK, which I don't know that that's the most reputable source for any sort of news. But there was an opinion piece that was submitted, and I found it intriguing, and I thought it'd be a good talking point. But
she did write a book on this topic.
This is actually true. There's usually an actual author. Right. But
it's not just some schmuck.
Yeah. The very top of this article, though, is how touchy-feely parenting, and I guess you can say gentle parenting in some ways, and therapy have created the loneliest, most helpless, depressed, and fearful young people ever. And then they go on to talk about 6 bad therapy tactics that could be harming your children. And I found this to be such an intriguing topic because there were some things that I agreed with, some parts where I was like, I don't know, but maybe it's a hard truth that needed to be said. But the gist of it is there are a lot of actions that we are taking today as parents that we feel are beneficial to our children, whether that's mitigating any sort of fighting and failure and discomforts and eliminating all forms of, quote, trauma that they talk about in the article. but we may not see that in the long run. That is potentially, helping these kids to, or guiding these kids toward a path where they're ill-equipped to deal with any sort of adversity. They're ill-equipped to do basic tasks like, engaging in a social setting. There are stories of people saying, like, trying to, book an appointment with someone on a phone and needing the reassurance of mom beforehand to make sure that they could, get on the phone and do these things. So that's the general overview of what this article went into. And they specifically deep dive into like 6 particular, I in some ways it kind of felt like an attack on therapy. Quick break here. If you guys are watching on YouTube, Saunders brought in baby.
This is
here.
Scarlett.
Hey,
we're ceasing the goat screams, and she's just gonna join us for a minute.
It sounded like there was a goat just bleeding in the back, but it's no, it's just baby Scarlett. So Dad Life on Dad Podcast.
Scarlett was
here.
upset. Scarlett was upset, so Dad's here to save the day.
Yep. That's what we're doing. Sorry, didn't mean to. I could hear you. I heard the whole train of thought.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, Andrew Saunders disappeared for a second while he went to get Scarlett. But coming back to this, they went over 6. It did sometimes felt like an attack on therapy, which I understood.
Yeah,
and that's where I kind of had like this. I get what you're saying, but I don't fully buy into it sometimes.
And let's be clear, too, like for context, the Daily Mail, if you look at any media bias ratings, they are right, bordering on extreme right in most of what they say. They use a lot of sensationalism. So just take everything with a grain of salt. Now, does that mean I absolutely like vehemently disagree with everything they said? No. I mean, I think some of it's interesting. Some of it appears to like have some data behind it. Yes. I don't know that it was necessarily presented in that way, but I think it's a good discussion to have. It's a good thing to think about.
That was a much more direct, better way to say what I was trying to say, because I just felt conflicted in some, but in agreement with some others. But I mean, all right, Ben, let me kick it off to you. What were some key points that really stuck out at you that you felt like you agreed or disagreed with regards to today's style of parenting and how it's setting kids up for success or failure?
Yeah, I think it was, I think overall there seemed to be a lean sort of towards this idea that like kids are overdiagnosed and overdrugged. I don't disagree with that, right? That seems to be kind of a basis of some of it.
Correct.
There also seems to be a very, as you said, like anti-therapy or anti the effectiveness of therapy lean, which I think that's challenging, right? Because one of the things that really struck me about all of this is I think that they take the opinions of what appear to be a few psychologists, psychotherapists, doctors, and for the most part, they seem to be giving fairly subjective observations about what they see in their practice. There didn't seem to be, except for a few cases, very like widespread data sets where they said, okay, we've looked at hundreds of cases and this is what we found. It's like, this is kind of what I see in my practice. This is what I think. This is my opinion as a single doctor, not as a society or as a group of psychologists. So that kind of set the tone for me for what I was seeing in the article.
Can I interrupt with one thing? So at the very top, they did bring up something that you just hit on, and I'll just read it verbatim from the article. It says, "We needed our children and everyone around them to know they weren't shy. They had, quote, social anxiety disorder. They weren't poorly behaved. They had, quote, oppositional defiant disorder.
Yeah.
Right. They weren't disruptive students. They had ADHD. It wasn't our fault and it wasn't theirs. Yeah. Right. So
it's
that was one of those things. Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those things where I was like, okay, yeah. It does. There does seem to be a lot of that where the responsibility like shifts away where nothing is your fault. But I don't know, I feel like there is some sort of accountability that gets lost here.
I agree.
So, and I'm sorry. So I cut you off. I'm sorry. I'll let you continue though.
No, you're good. Saunders, do you have something to say? I think you're on mute.
Yeah,
Oh, you muted me.
Yeah, my bad.
I think I think the article very clearly at the beginning made the point to say they were trying to explain what, for lack of a better term, the observational bias is. Why do we have a bunch of children who are just diagnosed and aren't responsible for their actions when that doesn't appear to be how we were raised? It isn't how our parents were raised. It isn't, right? And when I read through this article for the first time after you sent it to me, I'm like, I agree with 99% of this. And this is very much how I have experienced therapy in childhood and, right, like peers and friends with teenagers. And they're very much, in my opinion right now, it is never your fault. There is always a reason that you're doing whatever you're doing. And I think this article is kind of poking that bear a little bit, saying, no. Personal responsibility is a thing.
Yes.
Personal responsibility for your own kids is a thing. And we need to all stop allowing therapy and psychiatry in the schools to say, no, it's not your fault, little Johnny. Right.
Yeah. And then the article, the article also went on to say that, like, we are we have so much more mental health care more than ever.
Right.
And despite addressing everything that is popping up now, it hasn't like actually, well, and they say in an extreme example, it's like it's actually done absolutely nothing. In fact, the numbers have only gone up. Right. Now, I think that there are external factors that they don't address about.
Yeah, that's one that I really took issue with. And I think you're going to get into that, but that's one I really took issue with was like, at no time in human history have we had the access to technology, information, opinions at the speed that we have access to now. And at no point in human history have we been so commercialized and commoditized and sold to at every aspect, right? Like everything is either this side or that side. It's become incredibly like tribal, right? Where it's, if you don't believe all of these things and you believe none of these things, there's no way to be in the middle or to have a general and civil disagreement with somebody without them hating everything that you are, right? So we become super tribal and we become super commercialized and consumerized, which then means like the tools that they have in place to deal with this, like depression, anxiety, all of this, the tools that we have aren't really geared to address, in my opinion, the world that we live in today. They haven't caught up yet, right? So there are probably some tools that would work, but to say that it just doesn't work because it hasn't caught up or that there's more depression, I think it blatantly disregards the other factors like social media, right? And comparison and being able to see any and all information, being able to bully people from anywhere in the world at any time, just because you're unhappy with yourself. Like you can get led down a very deep, dark path in social, and like that, whether comparing yourself or being mean to others or having others be mean to you, it opens up, like I can only be bullied by the kids that were like in my high school, right? Like you could be bullied by like 4 or 5 other people and that was it. Right. Now I can, if I have 10,000 followers, I could be bullied by 5,000 or 6,000 people if something goes wrong. Right. That's a wildly different world than the one we grew up in.
So, and it's interesting because that was a big admission or a big omission from from what the article had kind of put together, right? But to Andrew's point, there is like a level of like personal accountability for the parents' part, right? Of like, of what is our role, right? Sure, there's mental health professionals and all that, but like us as parents, what is our role in helping curb this into a better light? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I never even I looked at the article very much in like I'm a parent. What is my responsibility for my child when I know that the world is going to come at me with, they need therapy, they need drugs, they have this problem, right? And I don't even think the idea of the bombardment of social media, and it was even part of the topic idea, right? Because I think they were very much, I mean, again, it's 6 items that you should avoid, right? And it's I don't know. The one that really caught me was when she was amazed that, and we should probably go through all 6 things, but the one that amazed me was when she was amazed that her 9-year-old wanted to walk home from the bus stop, right? Yep. And she was like, no, I can't do that. And then she had been writing this book, and she came to the realization that that was probably a good idea, right?
Right.
And my mother was never even given the option to not walk home from the bus.
Right.
I was barely given that option.
Yeah,
right?
They talk
and
about that
had
with
nothing
food as well.
Had nothing to do with taking care of us, or that was like time resource management issues, right? And we grew up fairly well off as kids, but I was still told, no, go walk to the bus, right? Like it was a thing. And so this, even the concept that you can't let your kids ride the bus because it's dangerous, like that to me is well, just because bad things have happened on the bus doesn't mean that every bus is a bad situation. And maybe you need to stop scrolling through your adult social media and getting all the nightmare fear stories and like remember what it was like when you rode the bus, right?
There's an interesting excerpt that kind of plays into what you're saying right here. And quote says, this is a generation strikingly different from prior to it, says Dr. Jean Twenge, professor of psychology at SDSU. According to her, members of Gen Z born between 95 and 2012 are less likely to go on dates, get a driver's license, hold down a job, or socialize with friends in person than millennials born between 1980 and 94. They also engage in the least amount of sex while arguably having it most easily available. And report having fewest romantic relationships. They're reluctant to cross milestones like promotions, marriage, starting a family, at which previous generations eagerly launched themselves. Bosses and teachers confirm this analysis, reporting that members of Gen Z appear utterly unprepared to accomplish basic adult tasks, like showing up for work.
Right.
And
we all have that observational bias, right?
Yes. Right. And you know what? This is actually something really interesting. Like I've had a lot of my friends who are in the advertising industry, because that's kind of I used to work at ad agencies, marketing agencies. A lot of my friends who have risen up from, copywriters or art directors into like creative directors, group creative director roles, who are in leadership positions, who now have to manage the new entry level writers and ADs and stuff like that are coming into the industry. And they've all like noted how like starkly different they are and how they need to be talked to, and how just basic things like showing up on time. They had to have like conversations like, please don't drink at work. That's like not professional. Like that's a conversation that they actually had to have with these new, a new generation of kids who kind of went to college, especially during COVID. I don't know if that did something where they had to like do school from home and it really like messed up the social interactions, but like, that's had an interesting impact.
Simon Sinek, I probably butchered that name, but he's
I'm aware of him.
You're familiar with him? He actually did about an hour and a half on this exact topic in one of his talks, because what's happened, in his opinion, is everybody gets a trophy kind of mindset, or it's not your fault, mommy and daddy go fix it mindset, has literally created a problem in the workforce where you have to teach kids right out of college basic life skills at work, because no one else has done it for them their whole lives.
We've actually seen that. At least I don't know about you guys, but for me,
I've seen it.
We've actually seen it for a lot of me and my friends who are now in leadership positions. That's something that they have seen.
And so
I go ahead.
Again, I don't see where this article is kind of off base. I think one of the things that it doesn't bring up is that modern psychology is designed for adults. And so the idea of even throwing it at a child seems a little ludicrous to me, unless your child has like very severe issues, right? Because we know that it barely works on adults. and that's even with if they give you buy-in, right? And if we're going to sit down and say things like, you can't feed your kids so much sugar because it'll give them childhood diabetes. Well, what if we feed them nothing but this is how you're supposed to think? Then of course they're going to think they're depressed. We've been talking to them about not being depressed for three times a week for 6 months, right? Did you guys lose me?
No.
No, I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I went to a therapist as a kid, right? I'm not going to lie. Multiple times. But it was all for like, Andrew, why did you do that to Bill? Well, Bill ticked me off, so I hit him. Okay. Andrew does not have an anger management problem. Andrew has an emotional response. Like,
yeah.
And we need to teach Andrew not to hit, not Andrew has an anger management disorder, right?
So on this note, it's interesting. Okay, so the main thing about this article is that they bring out 6 things that like you hear in therapy and why they are actually bad tactics. And maybe we don't have to go through all 6, but I do want to hit on the first one, which it kind of plays into exactly what you're loosely into what you're talking about. And the first kind of quote bad tactic with regards to like therapy is telling them to prioritize their feelings. Okay. In this case, they're saying that that's a bad thing because the kind of new prevailing message that we hear is for people to vocalize their thoughts, right? Not to just silence a child, don't stop crying. That's it, that you're done. That's enough. You have to like acknowledge their feelings and open up to that and if just hear them out. And this article, it says it's actually not always best to talk about your trauma and kind of in a way like reverting to the old ways where you can just kind of like bottle it up and take it. And some people will like just get through it, you'll be all right. And that's where this is probably the most, I guess you can say, controversial aspect of the entire article right here. Because while I get their point, I don't necessarily agree with that because I think everyone will process this very, very differently. And I don't know that this part is on point for me. This is the part where I feel like it may have missed the mark a little bit.
Yeah, I agree there. I think where I struggle with their take on it is, one, the idea of repression. So two, I think they missed a really big tool, right? It's not about prioritizing your emotions and your emotional state above everything else, right? Your emotions should not control your actions ever. It's just not like your logical mind really should control your actions. In a perfect world, like your logic and your sort of morals and everything would control everything you did. It would not be impacted by emotions. Emotions would come and go. You would accept them, let them pass through and move on. The reality, though, is like our emotions do have an impact on how we react to different situations. But at that point, what we've missed is sort of that bridge of you experience an emotion, you have a choice on how to process that. So you can either experience the emotion and allow the emotion to dictate the outcome, or you can experience the emotion, say, why do I feel this way? How do I manage it? And then what's the outcome that I want? Like, I probably don't want to have an emotional outburst. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I want to, have a better outcome than me not being able to manage my feelings. And so why are we not prioritizing and teaching kids that, like, yes, you will experience a range of emotions. They are driven by X, Y, and Z experiences, neurochemical transmissions, like all these things. But you have a choice in how you respond and react to the world. And this is sort of the best way to do that, right? Is to not react with an emotion, but maybe to take a minute, take a pause, take a breath, whatever it is, process it, and then think it through of like, how do I want this to turn out? And what can I do to help that happen? And what's in my control? Because you're giving up control at that point.
Well, I would say that to follow up on that, I think the piece you're, again, to say, that is a very mature adult way to process emotions, right? We had to learn how to do that, and it took a lot of work for many people, and we still know adults who can't even do that, right? So how do you teach that to a 2-year-old? And I think the point that the article is trying to get at is there's a piece between I'm having an emotion, how do I process the emotion? And that moment is I need to push this emotion away long enough to let the logical brain come back in. Because even as adults, we've all had that moment where you're just so emotionally ramped up, you actually have to take a break, push your emotions down, get back, and then you can go evaluate them, right? And the word for that is repression. And it sounds bad if you do it for the long time, or you never deal with your father dying, or you have PTSD because something happened in war zone and you never cope with it, right? It manifests terribly in the long run. But in the short term, you have to teach a kid how to stop crying long enough to articulate what they want in order to alleviate the emotion, right? Otherwise, they're just crying for hours or minutes, and no one knows why. And I think that's the piece that telling kids to right. It's telling them to prioritize their feelings. Well, that doesn't work, because at the point in which you prioritize being happy all the time, you're never going to be happy. You're always going to fail, right? And that's the exact argument she gives.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a for someone to think that you can be happy all the time is insane. Like, it doesn't exist. And prioritizing happiness all the time means prioritizing pleasure and all these things that will ultimately be destructive.
Right. And if we watch
the fact as a
any depression commercial, that's what we get fed. This is how it should be.
The fact that, like, you will not be happy all the time. The world is hard. Bad shit happens. You got to be able to figure it out. What we want to teach kids is resiliency and not fragility. And there's sort of two ends of the spectrum where you say, if I am a parent that says never deal with your emotions, we need to repress them, we need to do this, we need to do that, don't think about it, what you build is a fragile child. They cannot deal with their emotions because they don't know how. On either end of the spectrum, if you're either constantly prioritizing your emotions and saying this is the only thing that matters, or you're never dealing with your emotions, what you built is a child that doesn't have the tools to manage that, and it will fall apart at some point, whether it's in the workplace or in a relationship. It'll come out as abuse. It'll come out as, avoidance or laziness. And so what we haven't built into this system, and it sounds what I feel they kind of missed, and maybe this is just from looking at like my own parenting and how I try to teach my kids, is what they missed is that the tools to build resiliency piece. It's like you've either built your kids so fragile and so emotionally driven that they can't function in the world, or you build your kids so repressed that they also are super fragile, end up with anger issues and all kinds of different things that require extra therapy, drugs, blah, 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 whatever it is. But there's sort of that middle ground of what I would still consider gentle parenting with boundaries that helps you build a resilient kid that says, okay, I'm going to experience tough emotions and tough situations, and I can still handle them even when I don't really know what the outcome is going to be.
So, I think we really, in some ways, we covered both sides of the coin here, and this conversation can go on another hour. And we can still hit on all these points, but I do want to leave it to the people who are listening right now. You're hearing two sides here, and this is largely going to be dependent on your life experience, how your style of parenting, who you are, what your child is, how they process the information in the world. What are your thoughts? I'd love to see these comments in the YouTube videos, and I kind of want to hear your thoughts. But I do want to lead on to the next point that the article hits on. Bad tactic number 2 is to banish chaos from your child's world. There was a question that was posed that was, why are we seeing so many phobias and so much anxiety in children? And the answer came to their sensory deprivation. Quote, the pristine nursery, right? That's all quiet now. They're all using sound machines. They're not getting dirty. They're not getting normal chaos. Banishing normal chaos from a child's world is precisely the opposite of what you would do if you wanted to produce an adult capable of enjoying life's intrinsic bittersweetness. Which I disagree about the sound machine part. I think that's fantastic to have a sound machine. But I think that there is truth to that. I think we as parents really have kind of all morphed into an overly watchful, scared, tight leash breed of parents. I'm not saying all of us, but I'm saying I've in some ways I've even seen myself kind of fold into that, where I'm a little overly protective or watchful, and I see a mistake about to happen, and there are some instances where I hold back, and where I really have to let myself hold back and let them experience what they're about to do. The metaphor that we always see is, you see them reaching for a hot iron, you want to stop them from it, but in some ways it's like a little sizzle will teach them, so there is kind of that and
I do have a question for you guys too. Like, does that, when you see your kid about to make a mistake, even if it's something little, and you feel that lean to correct it or to stop them, in that moment of like friction, how uncomfortable does that make you?
It makes you really uncomfortable.
But for me, it's it makes my like the pit of my stomach kind of churn of like, I want so badly to correct it.
Yeah.
And then I know that I have to stop myself. Like I have to like almost like physically shut my mouth with my hand to like keep them, keep myself from going, this really isn't a big deal. Like they're not really going to get hurt. It's okay to let them make that mistake.
I mean, it happened today. It happened today to me and my daughter. We were, it was unseasonably warm. We went to our in-laws' house to go swimming. Boys were swimming, and my daughter, for the first time, going into a pool. She had a little floaty, and I'm right there with her. We're kind of like in this hot tub. It's extremely shallow. And there's like a step where she can stand, but when she steps off the step into, the standing area, she can't stand, obviously, because she's, she's 1.5, almost 2. And she will start to sink. And she kept on going toward it. And I'm like holding her back. But there was a moment where I'm like, I kind of want her to understand what the hell's about to happen here. So I let her step off, her head submerged for a quick second, and I pick her up, put her right back. And she came up out of the water like, oh, whoa. And in that moment, she learned what happened. She's going to hold her breath when she goes under. And I swear to you, like for the rest of the day, she didn't hit that spot again because she knew, she was wary of what that area, what the consequence of going into that area was. So she kind of stayed around the perimeter. And then when she wanted to go into the area, she kind of like leaned toward me, but she still wanted to test the waters a little bit and like literally test the waters, I guess. That makes sense in this context here. I mean, but it did in that instance, and maybe that act right there gets me canceled. I don't know. But for me, I was like, I want them to experience that, and it was hard for me. Like, I don't want her to like have that fear, but like she needed it. That's how she learns, but that's just a small example. But to answer your question, it's I don't like that feeling, but you got to do it.
I've gotten it, but I don't have that same gut check. For me, I've really let my 2-year-old go explore the world, and I have only stopped her when it's things like, no, 2-year-old, you can't pick up the chef's knife. Like, that is not going to happen, right? Yeah, right? No, do not put your hands on the inside of the oven. I don't need to go to the ER, right? But I mean, she hasn't gotten a 1st-degree burn yet, but she's definitely learned that pans coming out of the oven are hot, right? Yeah. And she taught herself that. She didn't, like, that's hot. Okay. Bam! Yep. I said it was hot, right? Let's get some ice. And I mean, so yes. I guess I'm a little more willing to risk her physical safety than it sounds like the two of you are. But again, a lot of it's under monitoring, right?
I think it's not even like I actually have an easier time with the physical safety stuff. I think what I've realized is this sort of over supervision. We did our like feral kids episode and all that, and I thought about it. I think that I am more and I didn't realize this until I really sat down and thought about it. I think I am more worried about judgment of my parenting by other people than I am actually about the situation that we're in. Like, I think if there was nobody else around, I would go, you know what, I don't really care. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But as soon as we get out into like certain spaces or certain things where like I want to correct, and what I find myself doing is overcorrecting, over supervising, over sort of watching.
I feel that
because
same
I'm like,
social anxiety.
I can't be thought of as like a bad dad who's not paying attention.
Yeah. That's why I hate flying on airplanes. I feel like
the
moment they
that's the other topic in here.
I was like,
that
it's
I
not
really
even about
identified
the
with.
kids screaming. It's about me controlling the kids screaming. And it's like, that's what it is. The eyes aren't on the tantrum. The eyes are on me reacting to the tantrum.
Right.
That's what and it's like, damn, I hate that. You know,
that's the
but
worst.
I feel like that's where we are at this point in society as parents. That is something that we are all cognizant of, whether we like it or not. That's the truth.
So the banish the chaos thing, you know what it brought up for me? And it was immediate. I'm like, yep, I read through this. This is obvious. Because we know there is scientific proof that bringing a dog into a home of a child makes their immune system better.
Yeah.
And do you know why? Because dogs bring in chaos and they bring in germs and they
feces
and
literal feces.
But at to link it to this question, right? A dog introduces a layer of chaos into your child's world.
Yeah, it stresses me the hell out. I don't like it.
Right.
We don't have a dog, bro.
But what it does,
Ben hates me right now.
There is a direct correlation to that chaos and your child's immune system, right? We know that. That's not even debatable.
That's why kids are always so damn sick.
And I think it follows reasonably that chaos would exist psychologically, right?
Yeah.
But to go back to Ben's last point, and the one you were riffing on, they actually talk about that in this one of the teach them to think about others. I think it's number 5 on the list, right? And she gives that exact example. The guy was harassing me, or the kid was being a pain on the plane, and the guy didn't even think about teaching the kid to talk about others, right? Your and we've gone over this several times, and the one that comes up is the $50 bad parenting fee at the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And hey,
that got the most engagement on YouTube Shorts, by the way.
But here it is coming in as another article of teach your kids to think about others.
Yeah.
From the very beginning. And oh, by the way, it follows at restaurants. It follows on a plane. It follows on the bus. It follows anytime you leave your house, right? Eyes
are on you. Yep. So I do want to hit on maybe one or two more of the kind of bad tactics that quote unquote bad tactics that are listed in this article. Number, I think it was like 4 and 5. Give them a name for their pain, and whatever the issue, dish out the drugs. So this is something that we hit on kind of, I think kids are overly medicated at such a young age at this point. That was kind of the 5th point, and the 4th one though. This one's interesting. I'll just read it verbatim and we can riff on this. A 5-year-old child wanders around his classroom distracting others. You take him to a pediatrician who tells you, sounds like ADHD. You feel relief. At least you finally know what's wrong. Identifying a significant problem is often the right thing to do. Friends who suffer with dyslexia for years have told me that discovering the name for their problem delivered cascading relief. But obtaining a diagnosis for your child is not a neutral act. It's not nothing for a child to grow up believing there's something wrong with their brain. It's hard for me to like lean one way or another on this one, because I agree. It seems like there's so much, like, I just have social anxiety disorder. I have this and that. I have that. I have that. And in their head, it kind of like defines their personality for the rest of their life. And it can become an excuse for their actions in the future. And I've heard this it becomes
an identity.
Yeah, exactly. And I've heard this lead into like the workplace, how they can't function properly at work. Is like, no, I can't do that. I just can't, because I have this anxiety, and it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. And that's where I kind of take issue with this. where, you know, identifying so early and putting a label on it. Hit the mic. Putting a label on it so early on could, in a way, be negative. But there is the flip side of that, where it's like, if there's something wrong, at least like now we know. Like, what if call a spade a spade? Yeah, it's dyslexia. But you know, it's towing that line of like addressing an issue or some sort of brain function and calling it what it is and addressing it versus having that be the defining element of the life and how and why I operate the way I do, you know? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
So 8th grade,
This is
8th grade, sat in the psychologist's office in my middle school for 4 days with a PhD student giving me every standardized test that existed for adolescents at the time. 4 days of full school, 8 hours a day. I got to leave for lunch. The end of that result was Andrew is already as smart as a senior in high school, to which I said, can I take the GED? I want to be done with this school thing because I was smart. The second result was I have visual spatial disorder, meaning I don't handle objects in 3D in my head really well. I have dyslexia for the number 4, but only a specific type of number 4, the one you draw as a triangle. Apparently, the triangle is supposed to point to the left. If you give me a sheet of numbers and say which ones are wrong, I will pick all the 4s that point to the left as wrong if they're in a triangle, but if they're open, I'm fine. I think it should be like a P, not a Q.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, right.
I had to like
you're doing
literally
it in your
draw
head, right?
Yeah.
So on the sheet of paper, I circled all the 4s that looked like a Q as incorrect, and I left all the ones that looked like a P as correct, despite the fact that that is inversed.
I really want to like take this test now.
And then I had this weird, basically like, where is your emotional level as an 8th grader? Right? Like, are you an 8th grader? Are you a 5th grader? Are you a 9th grader? Like, and I was like a 6th grader or a 5th grader. Like my emotions were way behind
all the time
where I was intellectually. Right. And my father was smart enough at the time to be like, the emotions are not your problem. We're not addressing those. Done. But I got the information. They either were smart enough or dumb enough to tell me the results at the time.
So you were appreciative of that. But you
as
also
a 14-year-old
have a personality
kid,
that doesn't let define you. You don't see that as a...
It didn't work well for me because I was immediately placed into special education because I was advanced, but I also had a learning disability now.
Okay.
And that meant that I didn't have to do any test in a classroom. I got to use as much time as I wanted. I learned how to be lazy with education in 8th grade.
You were given an out.
I was given an out. And I was a kid who took it.
Yeah.
And
I
and it
can't
wasn't
say I wouldn't have done the same thing because I was also like in advanced classes. I did like I could have graduated in like 10th or 11th grade.
Yeah.
Like,
but here's the thing:
I was basically done. But had I been
had
in that
to go
situation,
through the
I think I would
United
have done the
States
same
Navy
thing.
to learn basic work ethic because I didn't have those skills when I went to college. So I failed out of college the first time. I had to go through boot camp. I had to get somebody yelling at me for months. I had to go through just clean your room. Why? Because it's easier if you clean your room than I yell at you every 6 weeks. You're right. Like logically that makes sense. I guess I'll keep my room clean. Right. And again, in an intellectual, emotional health progression piece, everybody's learning a lot about Andrew right now. I had a plan to be like married and done with kids at 40. I didn't have my first kid until I was 38. So I feel like it put me behind by at least a decade because I was taught
that's your identity.
I was given the ability to not perform.
You know, that kind of reminds me loosely of this movie called The Farewell, where basically this family was informed of a grandma who had terminal cancer and she only had like a couple months to live. And they made the decision just not to tell her. And she went on to like live. I actually don't think that the grandma's still dead, but like she has it. But there's like the fact of like, what if we told her? when they have that knowledge, like, oh, I have cancer, all of a sudden they get into this mode where it's like, that
I'm dying, it's
I'm
over,
dying,
everything's
and then they
over.
die.
My mother
Whereas,
swears.
like, if I don't know, if I just live in blindness, like, I'm just gonna keep on going. It's just like there's something in your head that triggers. And I think everyone like study. It's a very intriguing thing. Now, I'm not gonna say that like, oh, just because if you're not told you have it, you don't have it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is the knowledge, though, does have an impact on how you live your life, and can have ramifications in your health, in your work ethic, all that. It's
My
very
mother
intriguing.
will tell you to this day that the reason she beat breast cancer so quickly and so well is because she knew she had a grandbaby on the way and she wasn't going to miss that.
There's a fight.
And she just mentally went, this is not happening to me. I'm going to see my grandchild. And that was it, right? Chemo be damned. It's going to happen.
Well, I think the interesting thing that you brought up too is like the work ethic was developed through doing hard things, right?
Yes.
Like you were given an out young, you were smart enough to take it because path of least resistance. I mean, that's completely understandable. Anybody who's given an easier path to do the same things that everybody else does, why would you not do that, right?
Yep.
That's why tax laws exist the way that they do today, right? You have an easier path to do things that everybody else should be doing. But here's the thing, like, you found out through failing out of college that you then took on the challenge of going into the Navy and you did hard things. And this is, I think earlier when we talked about the, not the over sanitization, the over supervision of kids, is we don't allow them to take on challenges. So we either say we're going to do it for you because it's easier. Technology has made things exponentially easier. We have to work far less. I mean, even going to the grocery store, right? Like, I'm thinking about my kids and their experience at the grocery store. We Instacart so much stuff because for us as parents, it's easier. I don't have to go to the grocery store with my two kids and haul them around and shop for things and look for stuff. I pay someone, they go do it for me. So I push a couple buttons, the groceries show up at my door. What I'm realizing though is that processes like that is like, my kid is never seeing me go to the store and physically hunt for a thing that I don't know where it is. I either have to ask for help, I have to interact with people, I have to have all these social interactions. I don't need to do that. I can push a few buttons and it shows up at my door, and I don't even talk to the person that drops it off at my door. They ring my doorbell, I go get my groceries, I'm done. So
you want to see one that's even
like,
worse?
Kids do not have to do hard things today, or even basic things like interact with other people, because 99% of your life can be lived through using applications where you never have to interact with another human being. So human interaction becomes scary. That becomes like the challenge. Like, it's not going and running a 5K. It's not going and lifting weights. It's like stepping outside and talking to another human being is a challenge because they've never had to do it
coming into physical contact with another human being, let alone talking to them, actually like letting them touch you. What?
We have a buddy of ours who he invented some sort of app that helps service like pest control companies. He sold it for millions of dollars. And I remember him talking to me once. He's like, I'm doing great, but what I'm struggling with is like, I don't have to do anything for the rest of my life. I just golf and do whatever. I don't know what I want to do. I think he went to Australia to go to like culinary school. But I think one thing that he struggles with is like, I just don't want my kid to like think that all I do is golf and we don't have to do anything for the rest of my life. Because like leading up to the sale of his company for many millions of dollars, that was a lot of work. That was a lot of pain. That was a lot of sweat. That was a lot of grind that his kids won't see. There's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of fights with his wife. There's a lot of that stuff. But now they're happy. Now they're great. And that's what the kids see. They didn't get to see the other stuff. They were babies. Now it's that's where he's struggling. It's like everything is just so easy. And I don't want my kids to be conditioned to this level of ease. And
even us, like, my kids have never seen us poor. Like, they don't know they will not know what it's like to live on ramen and meat ends and sleep on a mattress on the floor and live with 5 roommates and all. Maybe they'll learn that when they go to college. Like, so that's this idea of like, I think the greater idea of all of this article, and whether agree, disagree, is when kids come in unprepared for the workforce, the majority of them have never had to struggle for anything.
Right.
To work for anything, to struggle for anything. I feel like such an old man saying this. These young kids don't know how to work, but it feels that way. It feels like things have been made so easy that the challenge is never there.
Can I read you this comment?
Yeah.
There's a comment that literally, and I think this is a great way to land the plane on this topic here on this episode. It's a recent comment that was posted on this article, and it's someone from Sydney, Australia, that says, if kids are not taught to lose, to struggle, to overcome, to exert effort for little reward, to come second or last, to be sad or hurt or angry and work their way through those feelings, they will never be able to deal with the struggles and hurdles that life as a teen or adult will throw at them. Resilience and persistence and dealing with your emotions in a positive way are all learned. I think that was perfectly said, that comment. There's a lot of hate and berating and all these things in comment section, but that's one gem in the comment section that I actually love, and I'm happy it was posted as we started this episode, at the top of this episode.
That's awesome.
That's when it was posted, and I think that perfectly sums everything up. The challenges, the way you go about teaching the resilience and the persistence, and the way this article presented it was, one way, and the way others will perceive it is more through the gentle way. I don't know, but I think that though, that's the core mission that we're all trying to get. Okay, so Andrew, did you have one thing before I close things out?
No. I think kind of the way I'm looking at this is, I think Ben and I feel like we're on opposite sides, but I think very much we both agree. We both agree. We need to let our kids struggle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think how we're going to do that, how we're going to manage those struggles, how we're going to let our kids respond to them might be completely different. Right. And frankly, it doesn't really matter as long as they're struggling and they learn how to get through the struggle. What I think this article hits on extremely well is you can't not let your kids struggle, because what has happened with effectively Gen Z, as they're being labeled, is we didn't let them struggle. And here they are. They don't know how to do anything. Mm-hmm. So let them struggle.
It's on us as parents. It's on us as parents. So tell us what you guys think. This was a very good topic. A little bit longer of an episode, but I think this deserved the length that it got. So
I feel like it could go for a whole nother one.
It probably could. It probably could. But I think that's also the beauty of this. Me, Ben, Saunders, we don't agree on everything. We all have different approaches, but I think that's the point. I think because there is not one way, but guess what? We get to come away from this podcast and not rip each other's heads off. There are some differences.
We can have civil disagreements.
And
what?
We can have
disagreements. Civil discourse in 2024?
Cool. I know.
That's not no.
How amazing is that? But anyway,
and like you said, Andrew,
this is over.
The core of this, right, is we all want resilient, happy, resilient and adaptable kids.
Yeah,
that's it.
And
that's
I don't
what
give
we
an
want.
F
How you
on
get
how
there,
Ben achieves that, and I don't
how
give
you
an F
get
on
there,
how Saunders
whatever.
achieves it.
But as long as you have put good humans into the world, that's what we need.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Dad Verb Podcast. Check the link in the show notes, the description of the YouTube video if you want to join us on Discord. And you can also check out the article that we've been referencing on not super reputable source of news information, but hey, it's there for you. It's a good piece that got us talking. You can visit dadverb.com for courses from pregnancy up through year 1 of fatherhood. And as always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Did you hit stop?